sing you the tale of a cake made so fine. The cake, it was tarnished in walnuts and brine. Cause the cake comes from the sea, and so do I. I'm Agnes Peabody, I. But I'm back on land, and I'm here to say it's the Lady Auxiliary. Hi, welcome back once again. I'm Kyle, and I'm in charge of baked goods.
And I'm Justin, having a scotch on the beach. Punch.
Today, my bake is an old family recipe of banana bread. I say old family recipe because it was made by a family member, my stepmom. So don't ask the recipe. I assume bananas and other breads. Guess what? It's episode 8.
Hit, Run, and Homicide. We're finally back in beautiful Cabot Cove.
It feels good, doesn't it?
Yes, and we were greeted with a beautiful aerial shot of Jessica riding her bike along the coastline. Jessica notices Daniel O'Brien riding a bike and staring into his bike basket at this device, and he almost runs right into her.
This kooky old inventor has moved to Cabot Cove and has been living there for the past 6 years or so.
And he said, I'm looking at this contraption I just built. It measures my heart rate and my velocity. And she was like, well, I assume it's not working because we're not moving. And it says you're going 22 kilometers an hour.
You're in America. Like, why are you in kilometers? And also, props to him for inventing the first iBike.
Jessica invites Daniel to the Founders Day picnic where she's giving the speech.
He says he can't come to the Founders Day picnic and clam bake because he has a house guest. Jessica Fletcher invites them both.
And then we finally get to see her friend again. I have to wax eloquent about Cabot Cove founding fathers. How does this sound? Captain Joshua Wayne, a free-spirited adventurer who seized opportunities wherever he could find them.
Jessica, he was a pirate. If this were a stage production, she would definitely be the Jessica Fletcher understudy. You know, in those shows when you can pick out the understudies? For me, it's looking for the other fat guy. You know, in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, there's the man who falls in love with Bernadette eventually. He's a stouter guy with a goatee. In the chorus, there's another stout guy with a goatee that they've sort of made a joke out of. That's what I look for.
That's your casting?
A fat joke.
As they're having this Founders Day picnic and clam bake, down the hill comes a man running, being chased by a station wagon. It bursts through the fence, chases him across a baseball game that's in session, and he jumps up a chain link fence. The car runs into the fence and he falls on the hood dramatically onto the ground, and the station wagon pulls away, but what?
There's no driver. You know, Jessica just sort of watched herself get run into.
Well, she did make a lobster that's on her picnic table, so she was protecting her main lobster.
Must be a main thing.
So Ethan, who is pitching for the baseball game, tells Amos Tupper, played by Tom Bosley, that the car had no driver.
And of course, Tom Bosley, being the crack sheriff that he is, says, sounds kind of suspicious. And Ethan says, well, anybody can tell you, well, he didn't see it, but I don't trust you.
The next shot is at the hospital. Amos Tupper questions the man, Charles Woodley, who was chased by the car, and he said he used to work with Daniel, and that the car looked like no one was driving it.
So then we find out that Mr. Woodley, the man who was hit by the car, is friends with Daniel O'Brien, the kooky inventor. So I thought that this was his house guest who was in town, which made me think, put together, the inventor has invented this self-driving car and he invited Mr. Woodley here to kill him. But I also know it's probably the show trying to throw me for a loop. So I don't trust it. That's what it's made of me. I don't even trust myself anymore.
Woodley, who's got his leg up in a sling by this nurse Ratchet, who's pulling it up.
Sick nurse.
He reveals that he and Daniel used to work together at this inventing company.
Yeah, Wompco Electronics.
So the next scene, Jessica shows up at Daniel's house with a pie.
Fresh off of a jog.
She meets Daniel's house guest, Kate Simmons, who used to work with Daniel as well.
His actual house guest. Yet another one of those observations from Jessica. She sees two people and she pins them immediately for star-crossed lovers. Now, Kate, with her pie, I can tell what's going on. She's like, oh, he was always too much involved in his work. And then you cut to him and he's like, oh, I'm a crazy guy. She's just a friend. I wonder if they'll get together at the end of the episode.
Speaking of getting together, across the yard comes Daniel's nephew and his girlfriend. Daniel's nephew is named Tony, and then his girlfriend is named Leslie. And we find out they're engaged, and maybe they should invite Jessica to the wedding.
After how long of dating?
4 months.
4 months.
So we go to Daniel's garage out back. It's his inventing shed. It's his man shed, but I called it Wayne Zielinski's garage.
It's got a whole lot of bleep bloops.
Jessica tells Daniel that Charles Woodley is in town and that he was chased down by a driverless car.
We find out that Daniel O'Brien hates Charles Woodley. Come to find out that Daniel O'Brien was fired from Wamco Industries.
And he says, the only thing I'd invite Woodley and Merrill to would be to a hanging party, and only then if I was in charge of the ropes. Down by the pier, Ethan's working on his boat, and this ominous man in khakis, we find out is Dean Merrill, gets off the boat, chats with Ethan about where the hospital is because he's there and he wants to visit Woodley.
So Dean Merrill comes up to Ethan, fixing his fishing stuff, and says, excuse me, where can I find a taxi in this town? Oh, well, they're up at the train station about 2 miles that way. 2 miles to get to the only taxi? Oh, yeah, but if you ask old Pete, he'll take you anywhere for $5. Oh, where's old Pete? At the train station. Train station is which way? Up there about 2 miles. Oh, well, I better start walking. Where are you trying to get to? The hospital. Oh, that's only about 1 mile t'other way. I hated it, and I also imagined myself in that situation.
So Dean Merrill is walking up the hill, and he passes a mysterious station wagon just sitting on the side of the road.
We know the murder wagon.
It puts itself in gear, it just starts trailing him. There's this cliff to the left side of the road, which he runs across with his briefcase flailing, and then flings himself like a flying squirrel onto this cliff, but sadly slides down and gets smushed between the cliff and the station wagon, making this face before he died.
I was wondering if this would still count as vehicular manslaughter.
Our first death of the episode, though. Usually it starts with a death. So now we see Jessica back at her house, typing away. Ethan comes in and interrupts her and says, Dean Merrill is dead by a car accident. And she says, the same station wagon? They're like, well, we don't know.
The only people who saw it were the Tatum kids.
Ethan also says that Amos is stressed right now. And they know because he's continually clearing his throat. He says, Jessica, you might want to go offer your help to Amos.
She's like, oh, no, I shouldn't do that. As if you don't insert yourself into every murder investigation ever. And then she goes to see him and it's like, so Amos, how are you doing? He's like, well, and he's clearing his throat over and over. And she says, if you needed any help, he's like, oh, I couldn't bother you, Miss Fletcher. And she says, well, I just want to make sure that you have the help you need. He's like, well, come to think of it, if you wanted to help, you sure could. As if you're not gonna let her do it anyway!
She does that thing where the ladies obviously are in charge, but making the men feel like they are. It's like that scene from My Big Fat Greek Wedding. She says, I'm sure you know that Daniel, Mr. Woodley, and Mr. Merrill were all in cohorts at the same company, and they're a technology company.
Oh, well, I didn't remember that. A technology company, you say?
Yeah, and they could create a remote control car.
A remote control car, you say? But what else?
Then Jess and Amos rush to Woodley at the hospital, where he reveals that Daniel actually invented the remote control car, which sets him up pretty much for the murder. It was also revealed that there were 2 calls made from Daniel's phone.
Jessica has a friend at the phone company and makes a call. I know this is wrong and you're not supposed to do this, but could I have the phone records for this person? And this woman's like, well, yeah.
So she's talking to Kate on the front porch, kind of revealing, hey, I got the trace for those 2 phone calls that were made, and rattles off 2 numbers. And Kate's like, oh yeah, well that one is Tony's office. She has them memorized as a house guest. She must be a freak house guest. And then the other was Woodley's company. This is where we find out that they kept Daniel's designs.
Remember back in the days when you had phone numbers memorized? Beep, 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 beep. Ring, 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 ring. It's very Daniel O'Brien's garage. Beep, 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 beep.
We cut to Jessica's house. She's making dinner for Ethan, Tony, and Leslie. Ethan reveals that Amos thinks the car was hidden on a moving van up north.
But then another self-driving car murder happens, and he's like, well, must be two cars.
So Jessica obviously asks if they've checked the old Gentry farm nearby.
Yeah, that's a thickly wooded place. Have you checked there? No.
She bikes up to the farm.
Immediately finds the car she's looking for.
She gets into the station wagon. She's like exploring around, like leaves the door of the station wagon open. And that's when we notice this like full Mystery Machine van behind her. There's that same mysterious gloved hand that goes onto a switchboard and switches the door, and the door closes of the station wagon, and then lock as she reaches for the door handle. It locks her inside and it zooms off. So it's going really fast. Obviously, or seeing a stunt double drive the car, but also trying to look flaily, which was my favorite. So it's like,
from the old farm, she has to go through town, and I was like, they're gonna crash in town somewhere, and then she just keeps going.
Before she gets to town, she passes these guys walking up a hill. Wasn't that Jessica Fletcher driving?
Oh, yeah.
And then she's zooming through town, and she passes Ethan.
Jessica!
And then they're headed toward the old abandoned lighthouse.
And the van is following her very closely. And then it goes to the Cabot Cove lighthouse. She busts through a fence and we're like, this car is gonna drive Jessica Fletcher off the cliff. And then it stops. And the van is like right there and unlocks the door. And then Ethan goes to ask Jessica if she's all right. Jessica, are you all right?
And you wonder why I don't drive a car.
But then they both see the van and then it just drives away.
In the back of the station wagon, they find the blueprints to Daniel's design of a self-driving car. They go back to Daniel's garage. Amos obviously says this is enough to arrest you. So they take Daniel in. Jessica questions Tony at the garage and says, did you share that information that I was going to the old Gentry farm with anyone else yesterday? And Tony was like, oh, I stopped at Daniel's. I stopped here and I may have revealed that they were looking for the car.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a secret. So we have the car, we have his plans in the trunk that match the plans that he has in his garage.
And now he had the knowledge of where Jess was going to be at that time.
Amos Tupper, the no-nonsense sheriff, has taken him into custody.
Also, Kate reveals that Merrill provided funds for the company and Woodley ran the show. So now that Merrill was dead, Woodley would get all of it. He would be in charge of the full company.
Since the car came after him but didn't kill him, is Woodley making it look like he's a target?
So Jessica visits Daniel in jail.
Jessica Fletcher is in the jail cell with him.
And really the only importance of that scene was that Jessica tells Daniel that Kate, his house guest, believes in him. Jessica is biking and gets a flat, right? Tony picks her up in his rental convertible. So Jessica pretends to have something in her eye when they stop for gas. And she's like, oh, do you have a tissue in the glove compartment? And she opens it up and she checks the car rental mileage slip.
And by chance, his glove compartment is where he keeps his car rental slip with the gas mileage on it.
Then we cut to the supermarket, and there's a great extra named Cora who's running the cash register, who is pretty funny. And she was like, did you hear about Daniel? Yeah, I never trusted him because he wasn't born in Cabot Cove.
Is it xenophobia? Is it townophobia? It's that thing where people don't trust people who didn't live in your town from when they were born. It's like, I don't trust anyone who's still in my town from the time they were born.
Then Cora says,
check out our new supermarket arcade racing game.
She's like, I'm not crazy about it because it's new, but it brings in some extra money. So basically Ethan's playing this car racing game. And then finally he persuades Jess to play. Jess steps up, she's playing, and he's like, no, it's going too fast. It's something like that. And she has I got it.
What do you mean you got it? You just wiped out 2 deer on a motorcycle. I love this show. This is so stupid. Jessica realized that speed was a factor, having seen how fast the car could go while she was in it.
It's also filmed from within the video game. Then we get this scene where Amos is going to reveal all of the information, right? And for some reason, he wants to do it publicly and invite all of these people there. Like he's doing a press conference. So then Charles and Amos get chased by this station wagon. Charles, who has a cane, and he's running down through the baseball field and just flings it like he's healed. Power of Christ compels you. And so then they're both chased. Amos gets out of the way of the car. Charles keeps running and literally recreates the exact same accident again. But Jessica's keeping a close eye on who's going to run to the van that's parked over there to turn off the car, right? Because this was all a setup. And off goes Leslie, Tony's fiance, runs over to the van and opens it up to try and turn it off. And then Jessica flags to Ethan across the way, "We're good, Ethan." And Ethan has the control panel and turns off the car. Who would run to the van is what she was looking for.
And then she shows up in the door of the van. "Why did you run over to this van?" "Well, I thought that I could drive it and get in the way of it." I don't buy it. It hinges on Leslie showing up in the van, having the remote, leaving the van unlocked, joining the picnic, and Ethan sneaking and getting the remote out of the van to trick her.
Yeah, it was a lot. This was the part that was like, okay.
The reason Jessica thought it was Leslie, Tony's fiance, was because when she was in his glove compartment and checked the car rental agreement, she saw the mileage, and the small amount of gas that he had to get does not account for the extended trips that Leslie was saying she took back and forth to Portland. So the car wasn't being used as much. She thought Leslie was staying in town and, remote control killing people with a station wagon.
Then as they're bringing Woodley back up the hill, it once again got chased by this death car. But as he's being chased, he's yelling, Leslie, shut it off, Leslie. So gives himself away. Then he's coming up the hill. Leslie starts spilling the beans and he's like, "Shut up, Leslie." And she goes, "If I'm going down, you're going down too." And basically they take out each other.
The murder victim was Merrill. He was killed, so all the money and influence of the company goes to Woodley. But then Leslie was in it because Tony would have the plans if his uncle Daniel was declared insane. Because if he died, then his plans would go to his university. So they had to keep the uncle alive and declared mentally unfit so that they could have access to the plans.
We are then seen back at Jessica's house. She's made dinner for Daniel and Kate. And in the earlier part of the episode, Kate has asked Daniel to come to Memphis with her. He toasts Jessica and says, "To the lady who saved my life and to the lady who has, saved my life my whole life, but I'm not going to Memphis with you." And you're like, "Oh, no, old people, get your shit together." And then he says, "I would love for you to come live in Cabot Cove with me."
Yeah, what a wonderful, heartwarming moment. I will marry you, but only on my terms.
Jessica gets the hint that they need a romantic moment, and so her and Ethan are like, "We're gonna go play that arcade game again." And then at the end, Ethan's like, "Oh, please, Jess, you don't stand a chance." And Jess is like, "I've been practicing." In all of her free time, Jessica probably has the highest score.
JB Fletch.
Kyle, sum up this episode.
If you want to make it look like a real murder, make sure you don't drive your remote control station wagon too slow so the guy only breaks a leg.
If you're going to be friends with an inventor who designs remote control cars, make sure you don't live in coastal Maine.
Here we are. Take some cake. Here I am. Take some punch. It's Kyle and Justin. Kyle and Justin. Welcome. I have so many bug bites, I don't know where to start scratching.
If you jogged every morning like I do, maybe you'd learn something.
I wrote 3 orders and was propositioned by a gorgeous hunk who owns a zipper factory. Hot tea, bouillon, hot chocolate, anything? I played Crazy Old Maurice when I was 23.
Oh.
Tom Bosley.
And now what role would you play?
Crazy Old Maurice.
Yeah.
You want to talk about my cake?
I always want to talk about your cakes, Kyle.